everyone, and welcome back to PIA's The Break. My name is Clare Irvine. I'm the Government Affairs Counsel for PIA, and joining us today, we have Brad Lachut, the Director of Government Affairs, to give a very brief introduction to New Jersey certificates of insurance law. We've been getting a lot of questions about certificates of insurance, and this is just intended to be a very quick introduction and overview of both what they are and the penalties for falsifying information on them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brad.
Great. Thank you very much, Claire. I appreciate you correctly stating my title as I incorrectly stated yours during the last video. You'll be able to figure out which video that is by looking at our outfits, which ones match, which ones don't. It's a little homework assignment for all of you, or a scavenger hunt, make it sound more fun. Anyways, to the point of this is the New Jersey Certificate of Insurance Law. We've gotten a lot of calls from members recently involving certificates. They tend to pop up every couple of years. So I figured it's a good time to go through the primer. First things first, what is a certificate of insurance? It's a good question. Let me answer it for you. Certificate of insurance serves as proof of an insurance. It's basically like your checking account information. It tells you how much you have in there, right? It's not your actual checking account, but it does tell you how much is in there. The certificate of insurance isn't an actual policy, but it does tell you the information that is in the policy. Policy limits, certain coverages, key coverages, things like that. Traditionally, it's used to satisfy the requirements of a contract. One party requires the other party to have a certain amount of insurance coverage. Instead of that party with the requirement producing their 100-page document or policy, they give them a one-page certificate that says, I have insurance. Much easier, much quicker way to do business. The point is, though, the certificate is not the policy. It is just a representation of what is in the policy. That leads to the next issue. And that is, what are the requirements of a certificate of insurance in New Jersey? Because it is evidence of insurance, right, and not the actual policy, there are certain things you can and cannot do with a certificate. Namely, the certificate of insurance can't misrepresent what's in the policy. So now a certificate under the law is any document that is going to be issued by an insurance producer or a carrier that serves as evidence of property. That's whether you put it on a record form or on a cocktail napkin. If you're writing the carrier name, the policy number, and limits, it's probably going to be a certificate of insurance, so you better make sure the information in there is correct, because if it's not, it's going to violate the law. Again, if you're writing on cocktail napkins, you might have a bigger issue, but if you are, still make sure it's accurate. That's the important thing. Importantly, also in New Jersey, unlike some other states, namely New York, if producers do business there, forms do not need to be approved by Adobe. So you don't need to send your cocktail napkin to Adobe to get them approve that form. Any form issued by a producer or a carrier would be considered a certificate. It does not need to have prior approval, from the Department of Banking and Insurance. Now here comes the meat of the issue here, falsifying a certificate. New Jersey law prohibits the preparation or issuance of a certificate containing false information. That says animation. I should change that, should be information. My bad. Also false animation too, don't copyright. It's a different separate issue with different separate penalties. We'll cover that in another break, or probably not, but don't do that either. But for certificates, if you prepare, that means if you create it and it's got false information, it's illegal. If you issue it, it's illegal. Both things, right? It's also, importantly, illegal to request or require that a certificate of insurance contain information that's not in the insurance policy. That is considered insurance fraud. So if I, as a regular person off the street, ask my insurance producer to give me a certificate of insurance that says I have $2 million worth of coverage, even though I have $1 million worth of coverage, I have now broken the law and I am guilty of insurance fraud. So don't ask for what you don't already have, basically. So if you need more coverage, get more coverage. Don't just fabricate it on a certificate. And it's important to note, too, that changes made to a certificate have no impact on the actual coverage. So even if a producer was to change a certificate to increase coverages or create new coverages, the policy is still the same. The coverages still remain the same. Whatever the certificate says doesn't really matter for the underlying policy. So basically, you've got no extra coverage and have broken the law in the process. Not a great result. It is also illegal to require a producer to state that a particular policy satisfies the requirements of a contract. So if a contract says you need to have X amount of coverage with A, B, and C different limits, you cannot ask your producer to say, hey, does this policy I have comply with this contract? can't do it, it's illegal, producer can't say yes or no. That gets into a legal area. You should ask an attorney, not an insurance producer. And finally, the penalties. So if you do break the law after all of this, what happens? Basically, it's a pretty stiff penalty. You violate the law one time, it's $5,000. A second time, $10,000, and a third time, $15,000. We're not going to go above that because I don't want to look at the dollar figures. So don't do it. It's very easy to break this law. So it's very easy to rack up a violation very, very quickly. So very, very important to know what the law is, and hopefully now you know, and avoid breaking it, please. With that, I will mention, if you have any questions on anything that I talked about here, please feel free to contact PIA, myself, Claire, the Resource Center. There are some additional links to the video below. I'm not sure if that actually worked or not. It'd be really cool if it did. That it has a wealth of information, more than I provided here in this, this couple minutes. Hopefully this was informative, and I'll turn it back over to Claire for any sort of questions that might come up.
Yes, thanks, Brad. So one big question that we've been getting a lot, particularly in recent months, is someone, a client gets insurance producer gets a request to put in information about a policy through a third party provider who is being hired by the general contractor to manage insurance policies. Mm-hmm. When the insurance producer gets this, and is asked to put in information about the policy, what do they, is this a certificates issue? How should they approach that?
Good question, Claire. And so the issue is, it was different depending on where you are. So talk about New Jersey law, because anything can be a certificate, including the aforementioned cocktail napkin. A form that maybe a third party is asking you to complete that is insurance information could be an insurance certificate. Being completed by an insurance producer, it is being used to serve as evidence of insurance. So under the law, it would be a certificate. So very important to make sure that you're accurately representing the information. Now, if you're talking about delivering a certificate in a different state, namely New York, and again, many of our New Jersey members do practice in New York or write insurance in New York, that would probably be an illegal certificate, because that form needs to be approved by the Department of Financial Services, New York's insurance department. And if it's not approved by them, then it's not a certificate and it's illegal. So depending on where you are, there's going to be different rules. The same rule that applies across the board, though, is don't misrepresent what's in the policy.
Pretty straightforward rule. It's amazing we have to talk about it this much for how straightforward it is, but that is why lawyers have jobs.
That's right.
And I will note that we also have the same style video, but for New York certificates, if you write a lot of New York certificates. So I'd recommend checking that out. With that, thanks, Brad, and let us know if you have further or more specific questions.
Great, thank you, everybody.